On my channel is heavily saturated asset. If you like the video, you can subscribe and rate it. Thus help the channel. Thank you. Lena and Jake were a young couple who had just moved to Austin, Texas. They rented a small apartment and were looking for inexpensive furniture to fill it. They were browsing Craigslist and found an ad for a sofa, coffee table, and TV stand that was perfect for their living room. The price was only $200, and the seller claimed the furniture was in good condition. They contacted the seller, who said his name was Mark, and arranged to meet him in the parking lot outside his house. He said he would bring the furniture in his truck, and they could pay him in cash. Lena and Jake agreed and drove to the meeting place in their car. They arrived at the parking lot around 6 p.m. It was already dark, and there weren't many cars around. They saw a white pickup truck parked in the corner with furniture in the back. They parked next to it and got out of the car. "Hi, are you Mark?" asked Jake, approaching the pickup. A man stepped out of the driver's seat. He was tall and thin with short brown hair and a balding beard. He wore a baseball cap, a plaid shirt, and jeans. He smiled and nodded. "Hi, yes, I'm Mark. It's nice to meet you." "You must be Lena and Jake," he said, shaking their hands. "That's us. Thanks for meeting us here," Lena said, smiling back. "No problem. I'm glad you're interested in the furniture. Come on, I'll show you around," Mark said, and led them to the back of the truck. He opened the back door and lifted the tarp that covered the furniture. Lena and Jake saw a beige sofa, a wooden coffee table, and a black TV stand. For the price, they looked pretty decent. "Well, what do you think?" asked Mark. "They look good," said Jake, examining the couch. "Yeah, they're pretty comfortable. I'm only selling them because I'm moving to another state and can't take them with me," said Mark. "Where are you moving to?" asked Lena. "Oh, I'm moving to California." "I've been offered a job there," Mark said. "That's great. What kind of job?" asked Lena. Mark hesitated for a moment. He looked around nervously. I'm a software engineer," he lied. "Wow, that's impressive," Lena said. "Yeah, well, you know how it is. The tech industry there is booming," Mark said. He glanced at his watch. "Look, I don't want to rush you, but I have to go soon. Do you want to buy furniture or not?" he asked. Lena and Jake looked at each other. They liked the furniture and didn't want to pass up the opportunity. "Sure, we'll take them," Jake said. "Great. Do you have the money?" asked Mark. Jake nodded and reached into his wallet in his back pocket. He pulled out $200 in bills and held them out to Mark. Mark quickly counted the money and put it in his pocket. "Thanks. Let me help you load them in the car," he said. He grabbed one end of the couch and lifted it up. "Can you get the other end?" he asked Jake. Jake nodded and grabbed the other end of the couch. When he did, he felt a sharp pain in his side. He looked down and saw blood dripping from his stomach. He had been stabbed. He choked and dropped the couch. He fell to the floor, clutching the wound. "Jake," yelled Lena. As Lena screamed, the man who had been pretending to be Mark pulled out a knife from his pocket and brandished it towards her. "Give me the keys to your car," he growled. Lena, trembling with fear, fumbled with her keys and handed them over to the man. The imposter quickly grabbed the keys and tossed them to his partner, who had been waiting in the driver's seat of the pickup truck. The second man got out of the truck, jumped into Lena and Jake's car and sped away, with the man who had been posing as Mark following closely behind. Lena, terrified and alone, knelt beside Jake, who was struggling to breathe. She tried to stop the bleeding with her hands, but the wound was too deep. She knew that Jake was not going to make it. As she cried, she remembered that she had her cell phone in her pocket. She quickly dialed 911 and explained what had happened. Within minutes, police cars arrived at the scene. They quickly secured the area and called an ambulance for Jake. Unfortunately, it was too late. Jake had lost too much blood and passed away before he could make it to the hospital. The police launched a manhunt for the robbers, and it didn't take long for them to be caught. The imposters turned out to be a pair of ex-convicts who had been released from prison a few months earlier. They had been using Craigslist to lure unsuspecting victims into their trap and rob them. Lena was devastated by Jake's death, but she found solace in the fact that the robbers had been caught. She hoped that they would be punished for what they had done, and that justice would be served. From that day on, she made a promise to herself that she would never trust anyone blindly again. Linda had always wanted a designer handbag. She loved fashion and style, but couldn't afford to buy the expensive accessories she admired in magazines and online. She worked as a waitress at a busy diner and barely made enough to pay her rent and bills. She had no savings, no family, and no friends to help her. She felt lonely and miserable in her small apartment in Brooklyn. One day on Craigslist, she saw an ad for a Louis Vuitton bag for sale for only $500. The bag was worth more than $3,000, and it looked authentic in the photos. Linda couldn't believe her luck. She had always dreamed of owning a Louis Vuitton bag, and this was her chance to get it at a bargain price. She quickly contacted the salesman, who said his name was Mike, and gave her his phone number. He told her he was moving out of the country and needed to sell his stuff quickly. He said he could meet her at a Starbucks near Central Park the next day at noon. Linda agreed to the deal and arranged to take time off work. She withdrew $500 from her bank account, which was almost all she had left. She also took her ID card and some money for subway fare. She put everything in her small purse and headed to the meeting place. She arrived at Starbucks 10 minutes early and looked around for Mike. She didn't see anyone who fit his description. A tall, blond man in his 30s, wearing a blue jacket and jeans. She decided to wait inside and order coffee. She checked her phone and saw that Mike had texted her that he was running late and would be here soon. She sat down at a table by the window and sipped her coffee nervously. She hoped Mike wasn't a crook or a thief. She'd heard stories of people being robbed or assaulted when they met strangers online. She wondered if she should have brought someone with her, but there was no one to ask. She trusted her instincts and hoped for the best. She looked at her watch and saw that it was 12:15 p.m., and Mike was still gone. She texted him again and asked where he was. He replied that he was stuck in traffic and would be there in 10 minutes. Linda felt annoyed, but decided to wait a little longer. She really needed that bag, and she didn't want to miss the opportunity. She finished her coffee and threw the cup away. She looked outside and saw a man walking toward the entrance of the Starbucks. He was tall, blond, wearing a blue jacket and jeans. He looked like Mike. Linda felt relieved and excited. She got up from the table and walked over to him. "Hi, are you Mike?" she asked him with a smile. He nodded and smiled back. "Yeah, that's me." "And you must be Linda." "Yes, that's me. Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too. Sorry I'm late." "That's okay. Did you bring the money?" "Yes, I did." "Great. Let me show you the bag." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a large brown paper bag. He opened it slightly and showed Linda what was inside. Linda caught a glimpse of the Louis Vuitton logo on the leather. "Wow, that looks amazing," she said. "It's really amazing," he said. "It's brand new, never been used." "Can I take a closer look at it?" Sure. He held out a paper bag to her and watched as she opened it completely. Linda pulled out the Louis Vuitton bag and examined it carefully. In her eyes it looked real. It had a signature monogram pattern, gold hardware, a red lining, and a tag with a serial number inside. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's yours," he said. She looked at him appreciatively. "Thank you so much." He smiled warmly. "You're welcome." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope with $500 inside. She held it out to him. "Here you go," she said. He took the envelope and opened it slightly and quickly counted the bills. "Great," he said. He put the envelope in his pocket. "Thank you," he said. They smiled at each other. "Well, I guess that's it," he said. "Yes," she said. They embraced awkwardly. "It was a pleasure doing business with you," he said. "You too," she said. They let go of each other. "Have a good day," he said. "You too," she said. He turned and walked out of the Starbucks. Linda looked after him with a happy sigh. She couldn't believe she had just bought a $500 Louis Vuitton bag. She thought she had won the lottery. She clutched the bag to her chest and smiled broadly. She decided to go home right away and enjoy her new purchase. She walked out of the Starbucks with a springy stride. Linda didn't notice that Mike followed her outside. She didn't notice that he pulled a knife from his backpack. She didn't notice that he walked behind her with a sinister expression on his face. She didn't notice until it was too late. He grabbed her from behind. Linda screamed as Mike attacked her. He pulled her bag from her hand, tearing the strap and causing Linda to fall to the ground. Linda was stunned and didn't know what to do. She watched helplessly as Mike ran away with her bag, which contained not only the expensive designer handbag, but also her ID card and all the cash she had withdrawn from the bank. Linda was in shock. She sat on the ground, clutching her torn bag, feeling violated and helpless. She realized she had been scammed and deceived by Mike. She had trusted him, and he had taken advantage of her. Linda knew she had to report the incident to the police, but she didn't know where to start. She had never been in a situation like this before. She felt alone and vulnerable, like a victim of a crime. She had lost her money, her ID, and her sense of security. Linda took a deep breath and stood up. She looked around for help, but no one seemed to notice her distress. She felt invisible, like a ghost. She knew she had to find a way to get back on her feet and move on, but she didn't know how. She felt lost and defeated. Ivan was a college student who had been saving up for months to buy his first car. He had been browsing Craigslist, looking for a good deal on a used car. One day he saw an ad that caught his eye. It was a 2010 Honda Civic, in good condition, with low mileage and only $5,000. Ivan thought it was too good to be true, but decided to contact the seller anyway. The seller responded quickly and said his name was Mark. He said he was selling the car because he had to move out of state for work and needed money right away. He said he could meet Ivan at a nearby parking lot the next day and asked him to bring cash with him. Ivan agreed and arranged to meet Mark at 10 a.m. The next day, Ivan withdrew $5,000 from his bank account and put the money in an envelope. He took the bus to the parking lot and looked around for Mark's car. He saw a silver Honda Civic parked in the corner with a man sitting inside. Ivan approached the car and knocked on the window. The man rolled down his window and smiled at Ivan. He looked about 30 years old, with short brown hair and stubble. He was wearing a blue shirt and jeans. "Hi, you must be Ivan," he said. "I'm Mark. Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too," Ivan said. "Is this the car you're selling?" "Yes, it is," Mark said. "Would you like to take a look?" "Sure," said Ivan. Mark got out of the car and opened the trunk. He showed Ivan the spare tire, the jack, and the tools. Then he opened the hood and showed the engine, battery, and oil. He explained that he had taken good care of the car and that it had no problems. Ivan nodded, impressed by Mark's knowledge and confidence. He asked if he could take the car for a test drive. "Sure," Mark said. "But can I see the money first?" Ivan hesitated for a moment. He was uncomfortable handing over the money before he got behind the wheel of the car. But he also didn't want to pass up the opportunity. He decided to trust Mark. "Sure," Ivan said. "Here you go." He pulled an envelope from his backpack and held it out to Mark. Mark took the envelope and opened it. He quickly counted the bills and smiled. "Thank you," he said. "You're a smart customer." He put the envelope in his pocket. "So, are you ready to drive?" he asked. "Yes," Ivan replied. Mark handed him the keys. "Here you go," he said. "The car is all yours." Ivan felt a rush of excitement. He couldn't believe he had just bought his first car. He got in the driver's seat and fastened his seat belt. Mark got in the passenger seat. "Let's go," Ivan said. He started the car and drove out of the parking lot. He drove out of the parking lot onto the street. "So, where are you from?" asked Mark. "I'm from Chicago," said Ivan. "Me too," said Mark. "What do you do?" "I'm a student," said Ivan. "What are you studying?" "Business administration." "That's cool." They made small talk as they drove through the neighborhood. Mark seemed friendly and at ease. He complimented Ivan on his driving skills and gave him some tips on car care. Ivan felt more relaxed and comfortable with Mark. He thought he got a good deal with the nice guy. He decided to go back to the parking lot. "Hey, can we stop at the gas station?" asked Mark. "Why?" asked Ivan. "I need to go to the bathroom," said Mark. "Okay," said Ivan. He saw a gas station nearby and pulled over to the side of the road. Mark got out of the car. "I'll be right back," he said. He walked toward the gas station building. Ivan was waiting in the car. He looked at his new car with pride and joy. He couldn't wait to show it off to his friends and family. He checked his phone for messages. He saw that his mother had texted him. She asked him if he had bought a car yet. He replied that he had just bought it and that it was awesome. She congratulated him and asked him to send her a picture of it. He pulled out his phone and took a picture of himself with his new car. He sent it to his mom. She replied that she was happy for him and that she loved him. He smiled at her message. He looked up from the phone screen. He saw Mark running toward him from across the street. He was holding something in his hand. It looked like a gun. Ivan felt a rush of fear. He didn't understand what was happening. He saw Mark point the gun at him through the windshield. He heard him shout something unintelligible. He saw him pull the trigger. Ivan instinctively ducked as he heard a loud explosion. He felt something hit him in the shoulder. He felt pain and shock. He looked at his shoulder and saw blood seeping through his shirt. He realized he had been shot. He screamed in pain and horror. He saw Mark open the door and grab him by the collar. He felt Mark dragging him behind him. Ivan tried to fight back, but he was weak from the shock of being shot. He felt Mark's grip tighten on his collar as he dragged him out of the car and onto the ground. Ivan's head hit the pavement hard, and he felt a sharp pain in his temple. He tried to crawl away, but Mark kicked him in the ribs. Ivan gasped for air as the wind was knocked out of him. He felt Mark rifling through his pockets, taking his phone, wallet, and the envelope of cash. He heard Mark laughing as he got back into the car and drove away. Ivan lay there, bleeding and helpless. He thought he was going to die. He couldn't move his left arm or leg, and his vision was blurry. He managed to reach for his phone with his good arm and called 911. He told them what had happened and where he was. He heard the sound of sirens in the distance and felt a sense of relief. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived and Ivan was rushed to the hospital. He underwent emergency surgery to remove the bullet from his shoulder. He was in a lot of pain and was heavily sedated. The police arrived at the gas station and began their investigation. They interviewed witnesses, collected evidence, and reviewed surveillance footage from nearby cameras. Within a few hours, they had identified Mark as the suspect. They discovered that he had used a fake name and a stolen car to lure Ivan into a trap. They tracked down the car and found it abandoned in a nearby alley. The police issued an alert for Mark and circulated his description to other law enforcement agencies. 2 days later, Mark was arrested in a neighboring state. He was caught trying to sell a stolen car to a pawn shop. He was charged with armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and car theft. He was held in jail without bail pending his trial. Ivan was discharged from the hospital a week later. He was still in pain and had to wear a sling on his left arm. But he was grateful to be alive. He thanked the police for their swift action and vowed to testify against Mark in court. A few months later, Ivan attended Mark's trial as a witness. He testified about the events that led up to the shooting and identified Mark as the perpetrator. He described how Mark had lured him into a trap and robbed him at gunpoint. He also showed the jury his scar and explained how the bullet had narrowly missed his vital organs. The jury found Mark guilty on all charges and sentenced him to 20 years in prison. Ivan felt a sense of closure and justice. He realized that he had been lucky to survive the ordeal and that it had taught him a valuable lesson about trusting strangers. He also learned to appreciate life more and to never take anything for granted. Linda has always had a passion for technology. She loved exploring new gadgets and devices that could make her life easier and more fun. She was especially interested in smart flash drives, small storage devices that could connect to any computer and perform various tasks, such as hacking, encrypting, or deleting data. She had heard that some hackers were using them to break into secure systems and steal valuable information. Linda wanted to get her hands on one of these smart flash drives, but they were very expensive and hard to find. She searched the internet for a long time until she came across an ad on Craigslist that offered a brand new smart flash drive for only $200. The seller claimed it was the latest model, with 128 gigabytes capacity and 10 gigs speed. Linda was intrigued by the offer and decided to contact the seller. She sent him an email asking for more information and pictures of the device. He quickly responded, saying that he had bought it from a friend who worked for a technology company, but that he no longer needed it. He attached some pictures of the flash drive, which looked sleek and shiny, with a small LED light and a USB-C port. He also said he could meet her at a nearby Starbucks the next day at noon. Linda agreed to the deal and made an appointment. She withdrew $200 from her bank account and put it in her purse. She also took her laptop with her to test out the flash drive before she bought it. She was very excited and curious to see what the device could do. She arrived at Starbucks 10 minutes before noon and looked around for the salesman. She had seen his picture in her email profile, so she knew what he looked like. He was a tall, thin man with short brown hair and glasses. He was wearing a black sweatshirt and jeans. She noticed him sitting at a corner table and holding a paper bag in his hand. He waved and smiled at her. Linda walked up to him and introduced herself. "Hi, I'm Linda, and you must be Mike," she said. "Hi, Linda. Nice to meet you," he said. "I have a flash drive here." He opened a paper bag and pulled out a small box. He held it out to her and said, "Here it is, the smart flash drive you wanted." Linda took the box and examined it. It looked exactly like the pictures he had sent her. She opened it and saw the flash drive inside, wrapped in plastic. "Looks great," she said. "Can I try it on my laptop?" "Sure, go ahead," he said. Linda pulled her laptop out of her backpack and turned it on. She inserted a flash drive into one of the USB ports and waited for it to be recognized by the system. She opened File Explorer and saw that the flash drive had a name, CEMAT 2021. She clicked on it and saw that it had several folders and files on it. She opened one of the folders that was labeled Hacking Tools. It contained various programs and scripts that could be used to hack into various systems and networks. She opened another folder that was labeled Encryption Tools. It contained various algorithms and keys that could be used to encrypt or decrypt data. She opened another folder which was called Deletion Tools. It contained various methods and commands that could be used to permanently delete data. She was amazed at what she saw. The flash drive was indeed very smart and powerful. It seemed to have everything she needed to be a hacker. She looked at Mike and said, "This is incredible. How did you get this?" He shrugged and said, "Like I said, I got it from a friend who works for a technology company. He said they were developing them for some government project, but he managed to smuggle one out for me." "Wow," she said. "That's amazing." She decided to buy the flash drive without any hesitation. She reached into her purse and pulled out $200 in cash. "Here you go," she said, holding out the money to him. He took the money and quickly counted it. "Thank you," he said. He put the money in his pocket and stood up. "Well, I guess this is goodbye then," he said. He held out his hand for a handshake. Linda shook his hand and said, "Thank you for selling me this." He smiled and said, "No problem." He let go of her hand and turned around. But no sooner had he left than he suddenly grabbed her purse from her shoulder and ran out the door. Linda was shocked by his sudden action. She screamed and ran after him. "Hey, stop, thief," she shouted. She ran out of the Starbucks and saw him running across the street. She ran after him, dodging cars and pedestrians. She saw him turn into an alley and ran after him. She went into the alley and saw him standing still, holding her purse in one hand. She approached him cautiously, trying to grab her purse back. But as soon as she got close, he pepper sprayed her in the face and fled. Linda fell to the ground, coughing and gasping for air. She couldn't see anything, her eyes were burning and watering. She lay there for a few moments, trying to catch her breath. Then she stood up and stumbled back to the street. Several people came to her aid, offering her water and tissues. They asked her what happened, but she could barely speak. She managed to say that she had been robbed and pepper sprayed. They called the police and an ambulance. The police arrived within minutes, but the thief was nowhere to be found. They took Linda's statement and searched the area, but they couldn't find any trace of him. Linda was taken to the hospital, where she was treated for pepper spray exposure. Her eyes were washed out, and she was given medication to ease the burning and stinging. She was discharged a few hours later and went back to her apartment, feeling shaken and violated. She realized that the smart flash drive and her purse were gone. The thief had managed to sell them and make a quick profit. She felt angry and frustrated. She had been duped by a scammer and a thief. She had lost her money, her personal belongings, and her sense of security. The police continued to investigate the case, but they couldn't find any solid leads. Linda tried to move on and focus on her work and her hobbies. She realized that she had to be more careful and cautious when buying things online or from strangers. She learned a valuable lesson from this experience, that the world can be a dangerous and unpredictable place, and that one should always be vigilant and alert. She hoped that the thief would be caught and brought to justice, but she knew that the chances were slim. Alex was a photography enthusiast who loved to capture the beauty of nature and people. He had a collection of cameras and lenses that he used for different occasions. He was always looking for new equipment to improve his skills and expand his portfolio. One day, he saw an advertisement on Craigslist for a professional-grade camera that he had always wanted to own. The seller claimed that he was moving out of the country and needed to sell his camera quickly. He offered it for $2,000, which was half the market price. Alex thought it was too good to be true, but he decided to contact the seller anyway. The seller replied to his email and gave him his phone number. He said his name was Tom and that he lived in Orlando, about an hour away from Alex's home in Tampa. He suggested that they meet at a public parking lot near a mall. He said he would bring the camera and the receipt, and that he only accepted cash. Alex agreed to meet him the next day at noon. He withdrew $2,000 from his bank account and put it in an envelope. He also took his camera and lens, which he planned to trade with Tom if he liked it. He drove to Orlando and arrived at the parking lot 10 minutes before the scheduled time. He parked his car and looked around for Tom. He saw a black SUV with tinted windows parked in a corner. He walked towards it and saw a man sitting in the driver's seat. He waved at him and approached the window. "Hi, are you Tom?" Alex asked. The man rolled down the window and smiled. He had short brown hair and a stubble beard. He wore a blue polo shirt and sunglasses. "Hey, Alex." "Yeah, I'm Tom." "Nice to meet you," he said. "Nice to meet you too. Do you have the camera?" Alex asked. "Sure, it's right here." Tom reached to the back seat and picked up a black backpack. He opened it and showed Alex the camera inside. It looked brand new and shiny. "Wow, it's beautiful," Alex said. "Yeah, it is. I barely used it. It's too bad I have to sell it," Tom said. "Why are you moving out of the country?" Alex asked. "I got a job offer in Dubai. It's a great opportunity for me," Tom said. "That's awesome." "Congratulations," Alex said. "Thanks. So, do you want to see the camera?" Tom asked. "Sure. Can I hold it?" Alex asked. "Of course." Tom handed him the backpack through the window. Alex took it and opened it again. He took out the camera and examined it carefully. It felt heavy and solid in his hands. He turned it on and checked the settings and the battery level. Everything seemed fine. He looked at Tom and smiled. "It's perfect," he said. "Great. So, do you have cash?" asked Tom. "Yes, I do." Alex reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope of money. He held it out to Tom through the window. Tom took it and quickly opened it. He counted the bills and nodded. "Looks good," he said. He put the envelope in his pocket and smiled at Alex. "Thanks for doing business with me," he said. "No problem." "Thanks for selling me this wonderful camera," Alex said. He was about to throw his backpack on his shoulder when he heard another voice behind him. "Hey, buddy, what do you got there?" Alex turned around and saw another man standing behind him. He was taller and bulkier than him. He was taller and bulkier than Tom, with blonde hair and a tattoo on his neck. He was wearing a black leather jacket and jeans. He had a menacing expression on his face. Alex felt a rush of fear in his chest. "Who are you?" he asked nervously. "I'm Jake, Tom's partner," the man said. He stepped closer to Alex and grabbed his arm. "Let go of me," yelled Alex. He tried to break free from Jake's grip, but Jake was too strong for him. "What are you doing?" asked Alex. "We're doing this," said Jake. He slapped Alex in the face with his free hand. The force of the slap made Alex lose his balance and fall to the ground. He hit his head on the concrete pavement and everything went black. He didn't know how long he was out, but when he woke up, he felt a sharp pain in his head. He groaned and tried to sit up, but his body felt weak and numb. He looked around and saw that Tom and Jake were gone. His backpack with his camera and lens was missing too. He realized that he had been robbed. He took out his phone and called 911. He reported the incident and gave his location. He told the operator that he had been hit and robbed and that he needed medical attention. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived at the scene. The paramedics examined him and found that he had a concussion and a few bruises on his face and arms. They gave him some painkillers and took him to the hospital for further treatment. At the hospital, Alex was questioned by the police. He gave them a detailed description of Tom and Jake and their car. He also told them about the camera and the money that he had brought for the exchange. The police launched an investigation and circulated a description of the suspects and their vehicle. A few hours later, they located the car on a highway and chased it down. Tom and Jake tried to evade the police, but they were eventually caught. The police found Alex's camera and lens in the car, along with the envelope of cash. They also found a few other stolen items, including jewelry and electronics. Tom and Jake were arrested and charged with robbery, assault, and possession of stolen property. Alex was relieved that the robbers were caught and that his camera and lens were returned to him. He was grateful to the police and the paramedics for their help and support. He learned a valuable lesson about buying expensive items from strangers and vowed to be more cautious in the future. In 2016 in Los Angeles, a young woman named Jessica was looking for a new cell phone. She had been saving up for months to buy a smartphone that would allow her to stay in touch with family and friends, take pictures, and browse the internet. On Craigslist, she saw an ad for a Samsung for sale that was in good condition and within her budget. She contacted the seller, who said his name was Mike, and arranged to meet him at a Starbucks near his apartment. Jessica was anxious and nervous as she drove to the meeting place. She had never bought anything on Craigslist before. She had heard that it was a popular and reliable way to find great deals online. She hoped Mike was honest and trustworthy, and that the phone was as good as he claimed. She parked the car in the parking lot and walked toward the cafe, carrying her purse with her money and papers. She noticed Mike sitting at a table near the entrance to the Starbucks. He was a tall and muscular man with short brown hair and a bristly beard. He was dressed in a black leather jacket and jeans, and a backpack lay on the ground beside him. He smiled and waved at Jessica as she approached him. "Hi, you must be Jessica. And I'm Mike. Nice to meet you," he said as he stood up and shook her hand. "Hi, Mike. Nice to meet you too," Jessica said, smiling back. "Thanks for coming." "I have my phone here," he said, reaching into his backpack and pulling out a black box. He opened the box and showed Jessica the phone. It looked shiny and new, with no scratches or dents. Jessica felt a rush of excitement when she saw it. "Wow, it looks great," she said. "Yeah, it's practically new. I only used it for a few weeks. Then I got an iPhone as a gift from my girlfriend, so I don't need this one anymore," Mike said. "It's a fluke. How much do you want for it?" asked Jessica. "I'm asking $300, but I'm willing to bargain," said Mike. Jessica thought for a moment. She had $350 in her purse, which was all the money she'd been saving for her phone. She wanted to get a good deal, but at the same time she didn't want to lose the opportunity to buy a phone. "Would you mind taking $250? she asked. Mike pretended to think for a while, then shook his head. "I'm sorry, that's too little. How about $280? he said. Jessica hesitated. She wanted to save some money for herself, but she also really wanted the phone. "Okay, fine. $280, she agreed. "Great. Do you have cash?" asked Mike. "Yes, I do," Jessica said. She opened her purse and pulled out her wallet. She counted out $280 in bills and handed it to Mike. Mike took the money and put it in his pocket. He smiled and handed Jessica a box of phones. "Here you go, enjoy your new phone," he said. Jessica took the box and thanked him. She opened it and turned the phone on. It worked fine. She felt happy and relieved that she had made a good purchase. "Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate it," she said. "No problem. It was a pleasure doing business with you," Mike said. Then he looked at his watch and pretended to be surprised. "I'd look at the time. I've got to go. I have another meeting in half an hour," he said. He picked up his backpack and slung it over his shoulder. "It was nice meeting you, Jessica." "Have a good day," he said. He waved goodbye and walked quickly away. Jessica waved back and looked after him. She was a little sad that he was leaving so soon, but she knew he had other things to do. She decided to stop at Starbucks and order a coffee before heading back to her car. She hung her purse on her shoulder and walked to the door of the coffee shop. She didn't notice that Mike turned around and followed behind her. He waited until she reached the Starbucks door, then ran up to her and grabbed her arm. He yanked her back with force and pushed her toward his car. which was parked next to her car in the parking lot. He threw her into the back seat of his car and slammed the door behind him. He jumped into the driver's seat and started the engine. He drove out of the parking lot at high speed, leaving Jessica's car with the keys in the ignition. Jessica screamed and struggled as she realized what had happened. She fought back, digging her nails into Mike's face and kicking him as hard as she could. She managed to escape from his grasp and opened the car door, jumping out of the moving vehicle. Mike sped away with Jessica's purse, which contained her money, documents, and phone. She was left alone and shaken, with bruises and scratches on her body. Fortunately, some bystanders witnessed the incident and called the police. After a thorough investigation, the authorities were able to track down Mike and arrest him for robbery and assault. Jessica was able to recover her stolen belongings and received medical attention for her injuries. She learned a valuable lesson about being careful when dealing with strangers online and in person. Jim always dreamed of having a big screen TV. He loved watching movies and sports and dreamed of having a home theater that would make his friends jealous. He saved money for months, working part-time at the diner and cutting back on his expenses. Finally, he saved enough money to buy a used TV on Craigslist. He found a good deal online, a 65-inch Samsung Smart TV for just $500. The seller claimed the TV was in perfect condition and that he was selling it because he was moving to another state. Jim contacted the seller and arranged to meet him at his home in a rural area near Austin, Texas. Jim drove his old pickup truck to the address the salesman gave him. It was a sunny afternoon in June 2018, and Jim felt anxious and nervous. He hoped the TV was as good as it looked to the pictures and that the seller was honest and reliable. He pulled up to the seller's house, which was a dilapidated trailer surrounded by junk and weeds. He parked his truck in front of the trailer and got out, carrying a backpack with $500 in cash. He knocked on the door and waited. The door was opened by a man. He was tall and thin, with long greasy hair and a thick beard. He was wearing a stained t-shirt and jeans, with a cigarette dangling from his mouth. He looked at Jim with a smirk. "Hi, you must be Jim," he said. "I'm Dave, the guy who sells the TV." "Hi, Dave," Jim said, trying to sound friendly. "Nice to meet you." "Come on in," Dave said, stepping aside. "The TV is right over here." Jim followed Dave into the trailer. It was dark and dirty inside, with piles of clothes, dishes, and trash lying everywhere. In the corner of the living room, Jim saw a large cardboard box. It had Samsung written on it in black marker. "Is that it?" asked Jim, pointing to the box. "Yes, that's it," said Dave. "The TV is inside. I just packed it this morning." "Can I see it?" asked Jim. Sure, said Dave. "But let me see the money first." Jim hesitated. He didn't like Dave's behavior. He looked nervous and impatient and kept looking around as if waiting for someone. "I'll show you the money after I watch TV," Jim said. Dave frowned. "Come on, kid," he said. "Don't be like that. I'm not trying to rip you off or anything. I just want to make sure you have the money." Jim felt uneasy. He had a bad feeling about this deal. He wished he had brought someone with him, or at least told him where he was going. "Listen, Dave," he said. "I don't mean to be rude, but I don't trust you. How do I know that there really is a TV in that box? How do I know it works? How do I know you're not going to take my money and run away?" The expression on Dave's face changed. He dropped his cigarette on the floor and stepped on it. He clutched his fist and walked towards Jim. "What did you say?" he said, his voice rising. "I said I don't trust you," Jim repeated, taking a step back. Dave grabbed Jim by the collar of his shirt and pushed him against the wall. "You think I'm a liar?" he yelled. "You think I'm trying to scam you? You little punk." He punched Jim in the face, knocking him down. Jim felt his nose bleeding and his vision blurring. He tried to get up, but Dave kicked him in the stomach, making him gasp for air. "You're going to regret this," Dave said, grabbing the backpack with the money. "And this TV is mine now. Got it." He picked up the cardboard box and walked out of the trailer, leaving Jim on the floor, groaning in pain. Jim stayed there for a few minutes, trying to catch his breath and gather his thoughts. He realized he had been a fool to come here alone and to trust a stranger on the internet. He had lost his money and his dream of having a big screen TV. He stumbled to his feet and walked out of the trailer. He saw Dave's pickup truck driving away with the cardboard box in the back. He knew he couldn't catch him or call the police in time. He got into his own truck and drove back to Austin, feeling defeated and humiliated. He knew he had learned a valuable lesson, but it didn't ease the pain in his nose or his wallet. He decided to take a break from Craigslist and online deals, at least for a while. He also decided to invest in a good security system and to learn self-defense, just in case he ever had to face a crook like Dave again. Robert had always loved music. Ever since he was a little boy, he dreamed of becoming a famous musician and performing in front of huge crowds. He learned to play guitar, piano and drums, and practiced every day in his small apartment in Brooklyn. He also saved up money from his part-time job at a coffee shop to buy new musical instruments and equipment. One day, he saw an ad on Craigslist that caught his eye. The seller claimed to have a rare vintage Gibson Les Paul guitar for sale at a very low price. Robert had always wanted such a guitar, but he knew they were very expensive and hard to find. He decided to contact the seller and make an appointment. The salesman, who called himself Mike, told Robert to meet him in the parking lot near Central Park at 9 p.m. He said he would bring the guitar and show it to him before closing the deal. Robert agreed and took the subway to the location. He was very excited and nervous at the same time. He hoped the guitar was real and not a scam. He arrived at the parking lot a few minutes before 9 p.m. As he looked around, he saw several parked cars, but neither Mike nor the guitar were in sight. He decided to wait and texted Mike to let him know he was coming. Mike replied that he was on his way and asked Robert to wait outside the blue van. Robert walked over to the blue van and waited. He checked his phone again and saw that it was 9:15 p.m. He began to wonder where Mike was and why he was waiting so long. He began to feel anxious and suspicious. He thought about leaving, but then he heard a voice behind him. "Hey, are you Robert?" Robert turned around and saw a man in a leather jacket and sunglasses. He had a backpack on his shoulder and a smile on his face. "Yeah, that's me. Are you Mike?" asked Robert. "Right. Sorry I'm late. I had car trouble," said Mike. He walked over to Robert and held out his hand. "Nice to meet you, Robert. I've got my guitar here in my backpack. Would you like to see it?" said Mike. Robert shook his hand and nodded. "Sure I do," said Robert. He followed Mike to the back of the van, where Mike opened his backpack and pulled out a black guitar case. "Here it is, the Gibson Les Paul you were looking for," said Mike. He opened the case and showed Robert the guitar inside. It looked shiny and new, with a dark brown body and cream-colored fingerboard. It had 4 controls and 2 humbuckers. Robert's eyes widened when he saw the guitar. It looked exactly like the one he had seen in pictures and videos on the internet. "Wow, what a beauty," said Robert. He reached out to touch it, but Mike quickly yanked it away. "Not so fast, buddy. It's not a toy. It's a masterpiece," said Mike. He closed the case and zipped up his backpack. "So do you want it or not?" asked Mike. Robert nodded impatiently. Yes, I do," said Robert. He took his wallet out of his pocket and counted the money. He had $2,000 in cash that he had withdrawn from his bank account earlier that day. He knew that was more than enough to buy a guitar. "Okay, let's make it quick," said Mike. He snatched the wallet from Robert's hands and opened it. "Hey, "What are you doing?" asked Robert. Mike ignored him and counted the money inside. $2,000. That's not enough, Mike said. He looked at Robert with a chuckle. That guitar is worth at least $5,000. You're trying to rip me off, aren't you? Said Mike. Robert felt confused and scared. What? No, I'm not. You said in your ad that you were selling it for $1,500, said Robert. Mike shook his head and laughed. It was just a decoy, kid. You fell for it like a sucker, said Mike. He tossed Robert's wallet back at him and motioned to two other men who had come out of the van. These are my partners. We don't like people who waste our time and money. You're going to pay for it, kid, said Mike. Robert realized he was in trouble. He tried to run, but the men caught him and beat him up. They took all his money, as well as his shoes and phone. Passers-by called the police and an ambulance, and after a while the robbers were caught. Robert ended up in the hospital with a broken nose and several bruises. He was traumatized by the experience and lost all his savings. He had to quit his job at the coffee shop because he couldn't work with a broken nose. Despite everything, Robert didn't give up on his dream of becoming a musician. He took some time to heal and then started playing again. He even wrote a song about his experience and performed it in small clubs around Brooklyn. In 2018 in Atlanta, Georgia, a young man named Timothy Bosworth was browsing Craigslist looking for a great deal on a new laptop. He was in college majoring in computer science, and he needed a powerful machine to run his programs and projects. He had saved some money working part-time at a pizza place, but he still couldn't afford to buy a new laptop at the store. He came across an ad that caught his eye. It offered a MacBook Pro with state-of-the-art features and capabilities. The seller claimed to have won it in a lottery and that he didn't need it because he already had another laptop. He was asking $800, which was less than half the retail price. Timothy thought it was too good to be true, but decided to contact the seller anyway. He sent him a text message and asked if the laptop was still available. The seller quickly responded and said yes. He said he lived in Marietta, a suburb of Atlanta, and that he could meet Timothy anywhere in the city. Timothy offered to meet at a Starbucks near his campus, but sellers said he would prefer to meet at a gas station near his home. He said it was more convenient for him and that he didn't want to drive too far. Timothy hesitated, but agreed. He thought that maybe the salesman was just being cautious and didn't want to reveal his address. Timothy got in his car and drove to the gas station. He checked his phone and saw that the seller had sent him a picture of the laptop and its serial number. He checked the serial number and made sure it matched the model and year of manufacture of the MacBook Pro he wanted. He felt more confident and enthusiastic about the deal. He arrived at the gas station and parked his car up front. As he looked around, he saw a man standing next to a red pickup truck. The man waved at him and smiled. He was wearing a baseball cap, sunglasses, and a leather jacket. He looked about 30 or 40 years old. "Hi, are you Timothy?" the man asked. "Yes, I am. And you must be the salesman," said Timothy. "That's right." "I'm Mike," said the man. He opened the door of his truck and pulled out a black backpack. He walked over to Timothy and handed him the backpack. "Here you go, buddy. There's a laptop inside. You can check it out if you want," Mike said. Timothy opened the backpack and saw a silver laptop wrapped in bubble wrap. He pulled it out and unwrapped it. It looked brand new and shiny. He opened it and pressed the power button. It turned on and the Apple logo appeared on the screen. "Wow, this is amazing," Timothy said. "I told you, kid, this is a great deal," Mike said. Timothy looked at Mike and smiled. "Thanks a lot for that," Timothy said. "No problem, buddy. Now, do you have any cash?" asked Mike. Timothy nodded and reached into his pocket. He pulled out an envelope containing $800 in cash. He counted the bills and handed them to Mike. Mike took the envelope and opened it. He quickly scanned the bills with his eyes and nodded. "Sounds good to me," Mike said. He put the envelope in his jacket pocket and smiled. "Well, it's been a pleasure doing business with you, Timothy," Mike said. He held out his hand for a handshake. Timothy shook his hand and smiled back. "Likewise, Mike," Timothy said. Mike let go of his hand and turned around. "Have a good day, buddy," Mike said. He walked back to his truck and got in. He started the engine and drove off. Timothy watched him drive away and felt happy. He had just bought his dream laptop for less. He couldn't wait to use it for schoolwork and entertainment. He closed the laptop and put it back in his backpack. He slung it over his shoulder and went to his car. He opened the door and got in. He put the backpack on the passenger seat and buckled up. He started the car and drove away from the gas station. He decided to go back to his dorm room and set up his new laptop. He turned on the radio and hummed his favorite songs. He didn't notice that another car was following him from behind. It was a black sedan with tinted windows. Inside sat two men wearing masks and gloves. They had been watching Timothy from afar since he arrived at the gas station. They had seen him exchange money with Mike and take his laptop from him. They knew that Timothy had just been scammed by Mike, who was their partner in crime. They knew that Mike had sold him a fake laptop that looked like the real thing, but didn't work at all. They knew that Mike had used fake bills from another scammer who had sold him a fake laptop to pay for it. They also knew that Timothy had $800 in cash in his backpack, which they wanted to take from him. They followed Timothy's car until they pulled into a secluded street with no cars or pedestrians. They accelerated and crashed into Timothy's car from behind. Timothy felt a sharp jolt as his car jerked forward from the impact. He lost control of his steering wheel and crashed into a nearby tree. The airbags deployed, and he hit his head on the steering wheel. Before he could recover from the shock, the two masked men approached his car. They smashed the window with a bat and pulled him out of the car. "Give us your backpack, and we won't hurt you," one of the men said. Timothy was still dizzy from the impact and couldn't react fast enough. He tried to resist, but the men hit him with the bat and knocked him out. When he woke up, he was lying on the ground, bleeding from his head. His backpack was gone, and his laptop was nowhere to be seen. He tried to get up, but his body was in pain. He looked around and saw his car and the black sedan speeding away in the distance. He realized that he had been attacked and robbed. He reached for his phone, but it was also gone. He was stranded and alone, with no way to call for help. He managed to crawl to the sidewalk and lay there, hoping that someone would find him soon. He felt scared and helpless, wondering how he would survive this ordeal. Cassandra had been saving up for months to buy a car. She was tired of taking the bus to work every day and wanted more freedom and convenience. She searched the internet for a good deal and found it on Craigslist. A man named Mark was selling his car for only $6,000. He claimed he was moving out of state and needed to sell the car quickly. Cassandra contacted him and arranged to meet him in the parking lot outside his apartment. She withdrew the money from her bank account and put it in an envelope. She took a cab to the meeting place and waited for Mark to show up. She checked her phone and saw that he texted her that he was running late and asked her to wait for him. She replied that it was fine and sat down on a bench near the entrance to the parking lot. She noticed a man walking toward her from across the street. He was wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. He seemed familiar to her, but she couldn't recognize him. He walked up to her and smiled. "Hi, are you Cassandra?" he asked. "Yes, I am." "And you're Mark?" she asked. "Right. Sorry I'm late. I had some transportation problems," he said. He held out his hand, and she shook it. He seemed friendly enough, but she felt a little uncomfortable. She wondered why he wore sunglasses on a cloudy day. "So, where's your car?" she asked. "Over there," he pointed to the blue car parked in the corner of the lot. "Can I see it?" she asked. Sure. Let's go," he said. He led her to the car. She followed him, clutching the envelope in her purse. She hoped the car was in good condition and that it wasn't a scam. They reached the car and he opened the driver's door. "Here she is. She's in great condition. I've taken good care of her," he said. He gestured for her to get in the car and check her out. She hesitated for a moment, but then decided to agree. She got in the car and looked around. The interior was clean and smelled fresh. There were no warning lights on the dashboard. The mileage was low for a 10-year-old car. She turned to him and smiled. "Looks good," she said. "Thanks. It's a great car. You won't regret buying it," he said. He got in the passenger seat and closed the door. "So, do you have the money?" he asked nonchalantly. She nodded and reached for her purse. "Yes, I do," she said. She opened her purse and pulled out an envelope. She held it out to him. "Here," she said. He took the envelope and opened it. He quickly counted the bills and put them in his pocket. "Thank you very much," she said. He smiled slyly and held out a knife, pointing it at her. "Now give me your purse," he demanded. Cassandra's heart raced as she realized what was happening. She quickly grabbed her purse and tried to run out of the car, but he caught her by the arm and pulled her back in. He tried to grab her purse, but she fought back, hitting him with her other hand and kicking him with her feet. They struggled for a few moments until Cassandra managed to break free. She opened the car door and ran out, screaming for help. The man chased after her, but she managed to outrun him and find refuge in a nearby store. She called the police and reported what had happened. They arrived quickly and searched the area, but the man had already fled. Cassandra was shaken but relieved that she had managed to escape with her life. However, she had lost the money she had saved for months to buy the car. She realized that she had been too trusting and vowed to be more careful in the future. My opinion: many of these stories happened because of the victim's inattention and desire to earn money. For example, in one of the last stories, a young guy found a MacBook at half the market price. Anyone would know right away that there was something wrong, and he wanted to save money and ended up paying the price. Learn from other people's mistakes, or you have a chance to be in my next video. Thanks for watching. See you soon.